Hey there. This video is a little different than what we usually do on this channel, but I had the chance to interview the inaugural Spotlight Series champion, Nick Odenheimer, and I couldn't pass it up. We chatted about everything that came with playing in the Spotlight, to the meta, to just, getting into playing professionally. And yeah, I hope you take a listen. As I said, the video is a bit of a long one, so if you want to throw it on in the background or you've got a long commute or something like that, I recommend just listening to it. I think it's worth listening to and hearing his insights. So without further ado, here's the interview. All right, so Nick, how are you,
Doing
man?
good. Doing good, man. Yeah.
Yeah. How does it feel to be the inaugural Spotlight Series
It
champion?
still feels pretty surreal. I mean, I kind of forget about it until I go, to my living room and I see the trophy sitting there on the coffee table. So that's always like a nice reminder.
That's a good
Yeah,
place
for
for it.
sure, for sure.
Yeah. It's gonna live there for a
Exactly.
while, I
Yeah, yeah,
imagine.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I streamed the other day just for fun, and people were saying, "No, you gotta like set it up back here somewhere. Get a new shelf
Oh
for it
yeah,
and
you absolutely
everything."
do. Yeah, because you've hit the big leagues way faster than I think you thought you
Oh
were gonna.
yeah.
So now you've got to like set up a lot
Yeah,
quicker.
no, for sure. I mean, it was funny because me and Stanley were always joking, like, oh, when I win the whole thing, I'll make sure to put out a guide on Leyline, for everyone to purchase. And then, well, I won the whole thing, and I was like, oh, now I have to make a guide, really?
Oh, that's great. When did you start playing Magic anyway?
2012. Yeah, 2012.
Okay, so you're not a super old frog when it comes to that kind
Right.
of thing, but still, I mean, that's still over a decade
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Magic, which is crazy because the game's been around
for
forever,
sure.
I
Yeah,
suppose. But
yeah.
yeah.
My first pre-release was Avacyn Restored, I think. So I think it was like 2012.
Okay, and that's how you. So how did you get into it though?
My dad taught me. There was, one day, it was like my mom was studying for one of her big like exams, so my dad needed to
Okay.
give me and my sister something to keep us occupied, and he was like, "Hey, how about Magic?" And yeah, so he started in Ice Age.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
Ice
Ice
Age. Yeah,
Age.
yeah. So
Okay,
he was playing
and
around.
and he's got like a big
Yeah, he has a
collection.
nice like collection from back then, but he obviously took a huge break. So he has a bunch of cards from like
Okay,
Ice Age in that time period, but nothing like since then pretty much. So then, that period was kind of us jumping back into it. So
okay. So Avacyn restored, you
yep.
said? Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I think I started collecting around like Nemesis
Okay.
block, but only just as a
Right.
child.
Yeah.
It's like these cards
Yeah,
look
yeah,
cool.
for sure.
And then we played middle school Magic. And we didn't know any
Yeah.
rules. Like we were just kind of having
Right.
a good
Yeah.
time. So right off the rip into a pre-release. Now, has your family always been kind of like doing competitive stuff or liking that kind of aspect of games? Like, are you like a big board game family
Yeah, I
too?
mean, we'll play like random card games and board games and stuff. Family game nights and everything. But I mean, the competitive
Okay.
aspect of Magic was way different because now we're taking it to actual tournaments with other people we've never met. So that was a whole new thing for us. And we didn't know
Mm-hmm.
like LGSs were even a thing either. It just we were like, oh, where can we buy Magic cards? And we that's when we learned about
Yeah.
them. So
Pre-release, that was your first was that your first competitive thing ever, or were you guys always kind of doing competitive things, sports or
no,
other
I
stuff? Or
was not a big
I
sports
don't
guy at all. So I would say pre-release was
okay.
probably the most competitive thing I've ever done, which is funny to think of now
Okay. What?
because pre-release is not competitive to me whatsoever. So, but yeah,
No, it
yeah.
definitely isn't. How old were you back then when Avacyn came out?
Uh, Either
Because
11 or 12. I mean, if it was
oh,
2012,
okay.
I
So
was depending. I have to look up when Avacyn Restored was, but I was either 11 or 12 in
yeah,
2012. So
RCs after that, or like how did it kind of progress from
yeah, I
pre-release?
mean, once we did pre-release that one night, it was just we had a lot of fun, and we were like, Magic's something we want to keep doing. So that's when we
Mm-hmm.
found out, oh, there's more tournaments we can play. So F&M, that was the next step. So I still remember the first deck I took to an F&M was like this white green 100 card pile of stuff I just had in my collection, and bought an
Uh huh.
F&M, and then it was funny. My favorite F&M story from back then was I didn't realize there was a capped the number of like copies of cards like in your deck. So I brought like nine
Oh,
Deadly
okay.
Recluses that were in my deck. It's like a oh
That's a good
yeah, for
card.
sure. For me, I mean 1/2 reach Death Touch for two
Yeah.
mana, incredible.
Death
Like
touch.
yeah,
It's
yeah, for
incredible.
sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean F&Ms, we had a lot of fun. Eventually, I started to become like actually okay. I mean, I wouldn't say I was like, good when I was 11 or 12, but I at least got to the point where, I understand the types of cards that should be in decks and things. And that's kind of when I think it was the PTQ system back then. So that's when
Right.
we were like,
Yeah.
oh, dad, like, look, there's PTQs. We can go try to qualify for the Pro Tour. Like, let's try it. Let's see how it goes.
Okay.
And that was kind of like the start of it, I would say.
Okay. So your dad basically ferrying you around doing a bunch of competitive Magic, and that's how you spend most
Yeah,
weekends?
I mean, pretty much now. I mean,
Huh?
because yeah, back then, obviously, he wouldn't go to PTQs or anything without me. It was kind
Oh,
of
really?
like just a,
Oh,
you
gotcha.
know, thing for us to bond over, basically, because I
Mm-hmm.
love to go into them. So he's like, yeah, I'll drive you. I'll play whatever deck I can, and we both went. But it wasn't ever something he would do on his own. So it was kind of like a bonding aspect for us, but also my fun.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So did that like kind of just kick off that competitive spirit in you? Because do you do anything else competitively, or is it just
No,
Magic all the time?
I would say Magic's like pretty much my only hobby now, at
Yeah.
least. I mean, back then I was, played, League of Legends like everybody else did,
Okay. Oh, let's. Yeah, we got a tangent. Okay, so who did you main in League?
what was it?
The
I
people
didn't
want to
play
know.
like a whole lot of League, but I think it was Malphite. I think that's his name. Yeah, I
Malphite.
really enjoyed
Okay,
Malphite.
cool.
I liked I forget his name, Lee Sin,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah. They're
jungler.
just bouncing around people.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Just bouncing
yeah,
around,
I
kicking
liked him a
people.
lot. Yeah, yeah. Hearthstone was another big one for me. I loved Hearthstone.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Now I don't really play Hearthstone at all, but I loved Hearthstone back then. That was kind of like Hearthstone was like my virtual Magic, right? Like whenever I wanted to play.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, there wasn't like the arena wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
ready
There was no
yet,
arena.
and I mean,
MTGO.
no one's
I didn't
playing
really
it.
want to play when I was that young because short attention span. I wasn't, wasn't for
Well,
me.
yeah,
But
and it's still cumbersome, right? Like the UI was definitely wasn't built for younger
right,
audiences for sure. Like it was definitely it's got that 1995 vibe to it
yeah,
still. I mean, which I don't mind because that's I grew up on old machines like that. I mean, I played games on
right,
floppy
yeah, for
disks,
sure.
so this is my wheelhouse. But yeah, I get why it definitely wasn't
Yeah,
appealing
yeah.
to other
Well,
people.
believe it or not, my
Yeah.
first actual like game was Warcraft 3, and I started playing that when I was
Oh,
5. Um, yeah.
wow, that's an
Oh yeah,
incredible
Warcraft
game.
3.
Were you playing like the mods and stuff, or were you just like straight up
Now,
Warcraft
big
3?
campaign guy.
Because that's where League
Yeah,
started.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I was just a big
So
campaign guy, and then StarCraft came out, and I
okay.
also loved playing
Oh,
StarCraft.
StarCraft 2
Yes,
came
yeah,
out
StarCraft
then,
2 came
right?
out
Yeah.
2010, and then I was playing like StarCraft 1 mixed
Yeah.
in with Warcraft.
I still got to say even though I mean, I grew up on 1 and I still whenever I get kind of the itch, I still kind of go back to
Oh yeah.
1.
No,
Uh
I get that itch too. I mean,
I
they came
love.
out the remaster for StarCraft like pretty recently, and
Mhm.
so that was always a lot of fun to play. 'Cause, like relive my childhood.
It's always a good time. And I didn't think I would be into it, but whenever DreamHack came around last year and they had the
Oh yeah,
StarCraft championships, like I ended up like just passing by and then I just ended up watching for the next 30 minutes cuz like these
no,
guys are
honestly,
incredible.
like all of my friends, like they don't even play StarCraft, but I would like, oh, we gotta watch the StarCraft tournament. I really want to watch the StarCraft tournament. So they would come by and they would watch and they would get entranced. They have no idea what's going on, but they are just so fixated on like the APM, just all the stuff going on. They're like, wow, these guys, they're moving
Oh
quick.
yeah.
Yes,
It's
the
incredible.
StarCraft players, they go hard.
So Magic stuff, mostly
Mhm.
competitive stuff. Are you a big collector of Magic cards or is it just mainly
No, I
competitive
mean
stuff?
it's mainly competitive. I'm a collector by definition, but the only reason I collect is to build decks, right? Like I've
Mhm.
never sold a Magic card. Every single card I own is stuff I've bought for decks, and I don't like selling them. I guess I don't know. I'm like Mengu, buy
Yeah.
highs, sell low. I guess.
Oh, for sure. Hey, you don't have to tell me. I think so I would say I'm more of a collector than I am a
Sure.
competitive player. Obviously, I have cards from way back when I was. So a lot of it is nostalgia for me. But yeah, I absolutely. People look at me and was like, "Why do you have 4 of this common from Crimson Vow?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
man." Like, it's like, what am I gonna do? I was like, I'm gonna sell 5,000 cards for like ten
Right. Yeah. It's
dollars.
just
Like, I've got better things.
exactly. I like owning them, and then there's also the fun but annoying aspect of it when a new deck pops up and it plays this random common from a set like 8 years ago. I'm like, oh, I know where my cards from that set are. Let's go look for them.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. When they did the most recent reprint of Burst Lightning,
Yeah.
and my buddy came over and he's like, "Hey man, like do you have a Burst Lightning that I can borrow for SCG Con?" I was like, "Yeah, I got you." And he comes and he's like, "What the heck is this?" I'm like, "It's a Burst Lightning. It's from Zendikar."
Yeah.
Like, what
Right.
do you
He's like,
mean?
wait, this is a new in Foundations?
This just
Right.
came out. It's like, no, it
Yeah,
didn't.
no, I
I've
remember
had this.
because there's also the textless printing of Burst Lightning that's super sick. And so I had four of those,
Yeah.
and when Burst Lightning got split, I was like, oh, now I got to go look for my Texas Burst Lightning because I got to throw those in my deck. But
Yeah.
that's always like when
Mm-hmm.
Pioneer came out in like 2019, that was like a frenzy because then like all these random cards that were unplayable in standard and modern at the time, then we just start going through
Yeah.
everything. Like, oh,
I know. I'm waiting for maybe a more legacy light thing. I saw there was like a vintage, it was a budget vintage event that they were running at
oh
SCG
yeah,
Con. So it was like
the value
vintage,
vintage.
but you could only have a
Yeah,
$30
yeah,
deck, which is super appealing to me because I have all this old
yeah.
garbage.
Yeah,
So I was like, oh,
like
this
for
could be
sure.
good.
Yeah,
Obviously, standard is huge right now. I would say, and I think everyone seems to mirror the fact that standard is in a very
for
good
sure.
place. Would you say that that is your like? Do you have a favorite format, or do you not care
No,
really?
I mean, I would say, it's funny. Modern has probably always been my favorite format, but it was always my favorite
Yeah,
format for the fact it was like this eternal format where you got to play with old cards. And now with Modern Horizons, I feel like feels like that aspect has kind of died. But I
yeah.
still do enjoy playing with powerful cards. I still enjoy playing with fetch lands. So I would probably say modern is my favorite format in general, but I mean right now
Hmm.
specifically, standards just felt awesome. I mean, there was that 5 year dole basically where standard was unplayable.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
rough.
but now standard feels incredible. So my favorite format right now is definitely standard, but I'd say overall my whole time playing Magic, I've always loved modern.
Okay, before we move on to some other stuff, do you have a favorite card?
Uh, well, it's probably got to be
Is
Arclight
it Leyline
Phoenix,
of?
honestly.
It's got to
It's
be
got
Arc like Phoenix. That's such a
Faithless
sick
Looting's
card.
an honorable mention, but I think overall it's
Yeah.
Arclight Phoenix.
Are you really excited that we have Faithless Shooting back
I
in Modern?
was excited. Like for the first 3 weeks, I was
Okay.
very excited. I got all the Faithless Looting out of my system, and then after those 3 weeks, I was like, man, Faithless Looting kind of sucks now. So I'm less excited that Faithless Looting's not even that
I'm
good.
still losing to energy
I know.
decks. This is
Yeah,
unfortunate.
honestly though, like but I
Yeah.
was very excited. Like when Faithless Looting came out, I honestly made like an audible gasp when I was watching a stream and I saw it.
I gotta say, yeah. When I read through the BNR, I was shocked. Honestly, I did not see. I mean, between like the Faithless Looting, I was excited about the Mox Opal. I was like, oh wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
We're we are definitely trying
Oh
some
yeah.
things today.
I wanted unbans. I didn't expect four though. Four was a big surprise.
Yeah, it was a big surprise for sure. I mean, all the I think people were a little confused with the Amped Raptor band. I think that card plus potentially one more, I think people would have been more on board with. Or if it was one card, I think Guide of
Yeah.
Souls. I don't know if I mean, feel free to share your thoughts on the
Yeah, no, I
modern
mean it's
bans.
hard to say because I think it depends on what Watsy's goal was and
Yeah.
how what the community wanted, I guess, because I'm generally a fan of bands not killing decks. So I think a Guided Souls ban probably would have killed energy. I mean, it's just such an
Okay.
insane energy producer, and it's your main game
Yeah.
plan. But
And I think WotC has definitely stated that they're never, their intention is really never to
mm,
kill a deck unless the archetypal card is in fact a problem.
not
Like Nadu
yeah,
was such an issue by itself. Like banning the Shuko or whatever was still Nadu mechanically was still going to be an issue. So like let's just kill this
exactly.
deck. But I think you're right in the sense that they do want energy to still exist. So it would make sense why they left Guide in that
And
regard.
yeah, and while it may be like a kick in the nuts for some people that like energy still exists in its current form, I think it's relatively tame now, honestly. Like I think it's you have nice back and forth with the deck. It's just at the end of the day a mid range deck. So and mid range decks being the best deck is generally a good thing in my opinion. often.
Generally good.
So
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with energy being the best deck. It still just has
Mhm.
those like pretty egregious starts that feel bad. But
Yeah, I mean, for me, being a gross red player, the life gain is the worst part about it. Like, it's not so much that they can fill the board so well, or even gain the energy. It's the fact that I can't outkill their
yeah,
life. That gets particularly brutal, especially coupled with phage, or
yeah,
flage. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, then it becomes a little backbreaking. It's like, yeah, I'm at 22 now. I was like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
out,
Flage
bud.
is ludicrous, that's for sure. Flage is another big problem in that deck.
People were not high on Flage when it first came out. I was like, lightning helix on a body. That seems
Oh
pretty good
yeah,
to
same
me.
here. When I saw
But
Flage, I was like, all right, this is gonna be the next Uro. And I think it is. It's just like if Flage came out when Uro came out, I think Flage would be banned. I think the only reason Flage isn't banned is
yeah.
because modern as a format is just so powerful now that it's just tame
Hmm.
compared to the rest of what everyone else is doing, you know? Like
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Flage. I mean, and I don't think it's even bad design. Like, I don't think Flage is like a particularly like, oh my god, like
you
this
know,
is the
I like
worst. But I
Flage.
definitely,
He's fun to cast.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a cool card. Yeah. But I definitely, when I saw it previewed, I'm like, all right, so 4 lightning helix, 4 flage, and then I was like, how how many of these effects
Right.
can I put in
Yeah.
here?
I'm surprised Burn isn't playing it, honestly. Like
Yeah, I think Burn just took a couple slots. I think 2 Burn decks made it to the top of the
okay.
challenge just this
Okay.
weekend. So, maybe folks are figuring it out. Or I think it's also just the other decks are a little hard for Burn to get around as well. So I think Burn may sneak its way back into the meta. I think it just depends on some of the other decks too, not
I
just
can see that.
energy.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously talking a ton about Magic, playing Modern, playing Pioneer is like how many hours do you think you spend a week playing
A
Magic?
week. On average, 3 to 4 hours a day, probably.
A
So,
day.
but and then that
Okay.
number like drops off on Sundays, but then goes up on Saturdays. So I would probably say on average
Okay.
like 18 hours a week. Yeah,
18
because I
hours.
mean,
Wow. I mean, that's basically a part-time job in terms of hours,
yeah,
obviously. Well, I don't know. I don't know how you treat Magic in terms of like how like in those 18 hours is it grinding, is it practicing all the time, or is it like goofing off to
no,
having
I
fun
mean
or
honestly, Magic is 100% still just a hobby for me. I mean, it's
Mhm.
I play it because I enjoy it. I play it because it's fun. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't play Magic if I was just grinding, if that makes sense. Like I'm not the type of
Yeah.
person who's going to jump on Arena and be like, oh, I gotta test this deck. I gotta test out the new card in my sideboard for this weekend. Like even though I don't want to, I'm going to keep playing. Like no, I mean, if I just get an urge, I really do. Just like anybody else who likes the game, just feels like I just want to jam some games. And
And when you're playing, is it mostly, I mean, not to call it practice, but let's say, if you're going to jam games like right now, is it going to be standard
yeah, I
or,
mean, I just finished playing for like an hour on the couch, just jamming games of standard on an arena.
yeah.
I definitely I don't play. I don't know how to phrase it, but it's a combination of competitive and fun for me because I don't really play Commander. I
Mhm.
don't really play Pauper. I don't really play Legacy. And the main reason I don't play those formats is because I cannot qualify for the Pro Tour playing those formats. I mean, the Pro Tour being that end goal for I think for any competitive Magic player, it makes it hard to want to
Mhm.
play formats that don't can't get you there. But that's not to say I don't have fun playing those formats. I mean, I just this morning I was testing this like really weird and fun new standard deck just because I wanted to, not because I thought it was particularly good. I went like 0-3 with it, but it was a lot of fun to play. So
But you definitely have like the thing that is fun for you is doing neat and cool things that will progress you, or at least gain you experience when it comes to, being a pro
yeah,
tour
definitely. I mean,
player.
I still play Magic with a purpose in mind. I'm
Mhm.
not. I like to use the term mindlessly jamming games. I don't really do that. I will like play and after I'm done with a match, I kind of rethink about certain things that happen in that match that might want to make me want to change how I want to configure the deck, things like that. Um, so I definitely play with the purpose in mind. I still enjoy it, so I play for fun too, I guess. But
So, what do you think about having this Spotlight series coming back? Or, I mean, it's essentially just a GP
it is,
rebrand,
yeah.
you know, right? Which is, I guess for folks that don't know what that is, it's basically it's unlike the regional qualifiers where you have to win an RCQ and then you go to the RC and then there's a certain amount of slots, and if you get into those slots you qualify the Pro Tour. The GP, or the new Spotlight Series, is basically open to anyone and has Pro Tour slots available to it. So you don't have to qualify, you just have to show up and do well.
Right.
Yeah, for those that don't know what the Spotlight Series is, what do you think about having this GP, having the Spotlight Series coming back to Magic?
I think it's the best thing that could have happened to Magic right now. My biggest complaint with the competitive scene, I think, was that your only competitive outlet was the RCs. So you would spend,
Mm-hmm.
3 months preparing for an RC. You would play in the RC, and then either you do really well or you get unlucky, scrub out, and then you don't have anything to test for the next 3 months. Whereas like now that we have 5 Grand Prix in the US to practice for, that makes it so you have a lot more events to test for. You have a lot more chances to get onto the Pro Tour, and it gives you more of that end goal that every Magic player wants. I mean, again, like I was saying earlier, I mean, every competitive Magic player's dream is the Pro Tour, and even though that's not, it's a hard goal to achieve, definitely. But the fact that it exists,
I think my goal right now is just the top
yeah,
eight.
sure, yeah, exactly. But the fact it is a goal and regular people like me can qualify for it, like that's really what keeps competitive drive going. So
Because you've won RCQs in the
yeah, I mean,
past.
I've qualified for every RC since season 3 at this point, and I do it pretty easily. I mean,
Let everyone, how many seasons is that, or how long has that been? How long have you been qualified for RCs?
I guess we're in season 9 right now, so 6 seasons in a row.
Okay. And there's what, three a year?
3 a year, yeah, 3 a year,
Two?
yeah.
Three. So you've basically won at least one RCQ for the past 2 years every 3 months.
Right.
Essentially, somewhere in there.
Right, and then also
months.
with the new like SCG system, they have 2 RCs a season, starting with season. I guess it's now, so starting with season 8. So I've also won 2 RCQs this season, 2 RCQs last season.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Spotlight Series because it's back. It's the best thing ever that we could have had in terms of opportunity for players. Let's talk about the first one because that was the literal bringing it back in Atlanta. We had SCG Con, the first Spotlight Series. Let's talk about the event itself. And we'll do some high level stuff, and then we'll get into like the actual games and that kind of thing. But let's just talk overall the event itself. Did you have things that, the best things about the event, worst things about the event?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was overall really well ran. I mean, it was a really nice space, really open. I mean, SCG's been doing this for forever. Even with like their SCG cons that they were already doing, that they knew how to run an event like this. So I was very impressed. It definitely didn't feel like it was their first time doing things, or it didn't feel like the Spotlight Series was a new thing, right? Like it definitely feels like they've been doing it for a while. So that, yeah,
I
so
agree,
that was definitely a nice aspect of it.
Yeah, just for the main event, there was about 1,400, I think 1,453.
Something like that.
And I mean, our overage times were no longer than a half hour,
which is way better than RCs
per round, which
yeah.
better than RCs, yeah. So for an event to that scale, and I heard there were some minor issues I heard from judge stuff overall, but here and there, there obviously with an event that size you're bound to have some issues, but I would say the overall sentiment that I saw at the event was that everyone was having a good time and it was running really smoothly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you could tell people were excited to be back, and with this GP system, people were pumped. For a lot of people, it was their very first big event like this too. So it was great.
Yeah. Any areas where you think SCG Con could improve?
I mean, I wish we could be in a world where we don't have judge drama every time a new event happens, but I don't think that's specifically on SCG Con. Obviously, that's just more of like a thing that happens.
Right. I mean, it's a complex game. It's bound to happen. I agree. I wish it didn't happen. I think my only critique would be that I would like more than 2 food vendors.
That's fair.
And a place to sit down that wasn't it didn't have to be free play, but just a place to sit down that wasn't an active part of the tournament.
Yeah. No, I mean
So
that's a good point though. One of the more annoying things that I noticed at these events is it is hard to find a place where you know you can sit because just
right.
at the event on Sunday, I went and got Chick-fil-A, came back, I sat down, and then all of a sudden, for 5 minutes I'm just eating, and then all of a sudden a bunch of Star Wars Unlimited players are crowding me like, oh, I'm sitting here for my tournament. I'm like, what? All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's like a designated area that's like, all right, no events are gonna happen here, just so we know about it for when we want to eat and stuff, like that would be nice. But
Yeah, meet some. Yeah, so I don't have to like meet up and talk to like everyone else that's scrubbed out, like trying to meet in the middle of the
yeah,
hallway
yeah,
as
right,
everyone's
right,
moving
right.
through.
But
uh, but yeah, overall, I thought they did a great job as well running it. The things where I would say that they need to improve are just general convention
sure, yeah,
logistics. I'd also love an artist alley because when you do scrub out really early on, not that you would know, but when some of us scrub out really early on, I like to go drown my sorrows in buying things. And it's not always magic cards. I want to buy some
right,
swag
yeah.
and some other
Don't we
fun
all?
trinkets,
Yeah.
right?
I always love going to the vendors at these things. Honestly, I know I could just buy them on TCG Player, but there's something special about seeing them at a vendor.
Yeah, I like it when they got. I wish they would do like I know it doesn't make sense profit wise. Like the vendor slots cost a ton of money. Hauling a bunch of commons and uncommons isn't that ideal for them. Like they're not going to make any
Yeah,
money on it. But I'm not going to buy dual lands at every single vendor. I'm like I need a little more
yeah. That's
variety here. Give me some like one box of bulk rares I can peruse through and make a
no
deal
for
with. Like
sure.
that would be
But,
lovely.
it's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned dual lands though, because after the event, spoiler alert, for anyone watching, I won the whole thing. So after top four, when I was like, oh, I know I'm guaranteed like $2,500, I like ran to one of the vendors because I knew I wanted to buy a Bayou, and so I was like, oh shit, like
What are you buying a Bayou for? You can't play that in
I know, but
standard.
I really wanted one for some reason. I can't even quantify why, but I really wanted one. So I like ran to one of the vendors who was packing. I was like, I remember you guys had a Bayou. Like, hey, can you just like look for it real quick? And they dug it out for me, and I got a Bayou. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Shout
yeah,
out to them.
yeah.
That's awesome. All right. I want to talk Gruul aggro as a fellow aggro player and leyline lover. I want to talk about how do we come to the decision to run this deck?
It started off because I didn't know what I wanted to play for standard season, and so
Mm-hmm.
as like everyone else, the World Championship was the last big premier event for standard before RSQ season started. So I was looking through
Mm-hmm.
lists, like I watched all the coverage for the most part, looking through lists, and John Mendoza Pro did very well with a Leyline Gruul list. And once all the stats came out, Leyland Gruul had like a 67% win rate, I'm pretty sure. Like three different people played it, and they had a very high win rate at the World Championship. But I feel like the spotlight was kind of off them because none of those players like top eight or anything like that. But the actual win rates overall were very high for that deck.
So interesting. Going into this, you saw Gruul aggro with a solid win rate overall
Mhm.
going to it, but not a huge metagame share.
Yeah, specifically the Leyline version. I mean, Gruul aggro as like the Gruul
Yeah.
Mice deck, that was the most anticipated deck for me at least. But as far as Leyline goes, like
Yeah.
that was not something anyone was really playing. As a matter of fact, I think I was one of the
Yeah.
only people playing Leyline at least at the RCQ
I
level.
I know one. Oh, at the
Mhm.
RCQ. Okay, yeah. Because how many people were even on Leyline at the Spotlight
So
series?
when I ended up looking, it looked like about 10.
Okay.
I would not quote me on that, but I think it was about 10 people playing it.
I know at least one other person was playing it because someone was like, "Hey, look at my list." I'm like, "You should play Leyline. I have four if
Okay,
you
nice.
need."
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
knew two other people that were playing it, so there were I can
Hmm.
so that's four between us. So there are at least four.
Yeah. Perfect.
But I think
Okay.
I do believe I am
Dozens of
the
us.
only one who day two'd. That I think.
I
Yeah,
think
I'm pretty
so.
sure I'm the
Yeah.
only one who day two'd, but there were at
Hmm.
least three other people playing it. There weren't many, that's for sure.
No, no, absolutely not. I think a lot of people, and I have this like Leyline. I think once it took its, I really think discourse around Leyline was that it was a best of one pump and dump, like oh so cool, but just a flash in the pan kind of thing. I mean, is that kind of what you saw with it?
No, I mean that's the complete opposite of what I
Oh,
saw, and I think the
oh, I'm sorry, sentiment
yeah, no,
wise, like
exactly. No,
about it.
I agree. That's, I think, why a bunch of people disregarded it as a deck, is because people saw it as such. And I think that's why I was able to dominate with it, because I saw the exact opposite, where the power of the deck is you sometimes have those insanely good draws, but if you just play the deck like a normal good aggro deck, you'll do just fine, just like the other cool aggro decks will.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, typically, you don't see ley line. Obviously, this is a new ley line, but we've had ley lines in Magic for
Mm-hmm.
years now. Typically, we don't see a ton of ley lines in aggro decks because there is a lot of tension when it comes to just being a very awful
Yeah,
top deck for an
no,
aggro
that's very
deck,
true.
and yeah, and I mean, obviously, you think the power level of this specific ley line of residence for those at home, vastly outweighed that tension,
I
right?
do, yeah. And something I always joked about with my friends is, at the very least, I was playing the deck upon RCQs, and I had a 100% win rate at RCQs casting Leyline. Like when I drew a Leyline, I was like, here it is, put it in play, and then I just killed my opponent the following turn. Like the card is just so overtly powerful that I don't mind spending 4 mana for it if I do draw it. If I open with it, that's just even better. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it is weird tapping 4 mana and
yeah,
casting Leyline. As a modern, when I started playing pseudo competitively, I started in modern as well. So tapping out for a Leyline is like
yeah.
unheard of. So it definitely felt I was stretching my legs when I was doing it in
Mhm.
standard for sure. Not on a team, but obviously you do a lot of play testing
I
with
do,
friends.
yeah, yeah.
Because you guys had a big crew come up from to SGG
Yeah,
Con.
I would
Um,
say all the Tampa guys are kind of like in a team, just because we're all friends with each other for the most part. We all practice and share ideas together. I wouldn't say it's any kind of like
mhm.
formal team or anything like that. It's just more like a,
Sure.
we all like each other and we all play test together type of deal.
Okay.
My core
Yeah.
group is, I mean, relatively small. I mean, for the actual deck list that we came up with was kind of just me and Stanley for the most part. So
So you and Stanley against the world, creating a Leyline Gruul
pretty
aggro
much,
list.
yeah, pretty much.
So matchup wise, what were you kind of expecting? Good matchups, bad matchups with the deck, like.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I felt like the deck was pretty favored against most of the field. The only matchup I was scared of going into it was the other Gruul Mice decks. Those decks just had pressure and interaction, and because the Gruul Leyline deck plays more like a combo deck than it does an aggro deck, pressure and interaction is just very good against combo decks. And
Mm-hmm.
so, because of that, when you play against them, you have to leverage this game of, you have to be really aggressive because you have to kill them before they kill you. But at the same time, if you're too aggressive, they can just stop your start with a single burst lightning and then you lose the game. So it's very difficult to play against them because, again, you have to know when to be aggressive and when you can afford to be passive.
And I want to say I think that was your most seen match
Yes, it
that
was.
weekend. Was all you
I,
saw was
I
the
played
mirror?
against it 7 times, maybe 8 times.
Seven
Once I got
times.
to the
Oh my
top eight, I
gosh.
think, because I played against it in the quarterfinals, so that may have been my eighth or seventh. So overall,
Okay.
they
Wow.
were my two only losses. I only lost 2 matches, and they were both to Gruul Mice.
So you did not get lucky and dodge the the
No,
bad
I didn't.
matchups that weekend. No.
I
Yeah.
guess I didn't dodge the bad matchup. I was playing against it 8 times, but I also did relatively well against the bad matchup. So
Yeah, I would say despite you feeling like the list was going to be a tough matchup, it turns out I think you performed better into the mirror than vice
right,
versa.
yeah, that is what it turned
Yeah.
out to be. So definitely thankful for that. I don't know if I had a revelation while I was playing, or I just got lucky for 8 rounds. I don't really know, but
I mean, I think as most competitive Magic players will tell anyone, it's not just being good at Magic. You
you
got to
do.
get
Yeah,
lucky.
my favorite
Yeah.
phrase: you have to be lucky and good to win a Magic tournament. You really do.
Metagame wise, coming off the Spotlight standard, Frank Karsten always puts out his numbers as is so helpful, and
Mhm.
we love him for it. So Demir mid range ended up being 14% of the field. Gruul aggro 13%. Obviously, your deck a subsect
Right.
of that to some extent. I doubt that 13% were on
Right. No,
Leyline.
no. Probably more like 0.13%.
Yeah, yeah. And then Gruul mid range coming in third, and then actually the Esper Pixies list, which I feel like kind of came out of, it was kind of not really talked about before Spotlight, and then all of a sudden there was a large percentage of Esper's Pixie players. Do you know where that ended up coming from?
I don't know the origination of that deck, but I know it was kind of talked about probably the week leading up to it, because I remember when
Right.
me and Stanley were kind of discussing the deck and how we wanted to build our sideboard. Esper Pixie was not something we ever really talked about until probably the last week, and we were like, maybe we should come up with a plan.
I think that deck and the Zur Overlords deck kind of really cropped up in the last week or
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Zur was really falling off in popularity overall. I mean, the domain overlord archetype was always a powerful force in standard, but specifically recently it kind of fell off. But then at the spotlight, I mean, we saw it in the semifinals, and in general, it just put up a really good performance.
Demir Bounce and the Esper's
Mhm.
Pixies list actually had the highest winning rates, and then I think Selesnya. Like you don't Gruul, I think finally comes in after that, and it wasn't like it was a super dominating force like we saw with Nadu or anything. I think the lists overall were only like
Right.
54%.
I faced Esper Pixie around 11 or 12. I played against it. I ended up winning that. Well, yeah, I ended up winning that. And then I played against Demir Bounce in the finals. So those were my only two times playing against it.
Right. And how would you think that having Leyline, did that help you or hurt you in those
I think it
games?
definitely hurts you, because those are the
Mm-hmm.
matchups. Those are really the only matchups, honestly, where you pivot off of Leyline. Because yeah, for those matchups, you cut all the Leylines because their interaction is just there's so much of it. So trying to assemble a
Right.
kill like that is so unrealistic that you just cut the ley lines, bring in
Mm-hmm.
some alternative threats, and go from there. Because I'm pretty sure I lost. I definitely lost game one against Esper Pixie when I had a ley line in play, and then I ended up winning game one against Demir Bounce, but I didn't even see a ley line. So that was just, I guess, lucky on my part because I didn't want to see a ley line. So yeah.
Overall, in terms of how you guys prepped for the event, you kind of saw what you thought you were going to see, and that kind of thing, matchup wise, mostly expected, and went how you thought it was
Yeah,
going.
yeah. I mean, I guess I expected maybe a little bit more Demir mid range than I played against. I mean, I only
Yeah.
played against classic Demir twice over the weekend, and then
Okay.
the other like Esper and Demir I played against once each, so four times total for like the blue black mid range decks. That was a little surprising. But besides that, pretty much an expected metagame. No surprises.
Okay. Well, that's good. Aside from Leyline, you're also playing one of, I'll say our favorite card,
Oh
Questing
yeah,
Druid.
big Questing Druid fan. Yeah.
Big Questing Druid fan.
Oh
Love that
yeah.
card. Jam it, even if the colors don't
Yeah.
make sense. I'm
Just
putting green
splash it
in.
in. Why not? Questing Phoenix lovers out there?
Oh man, there are
Oh
dozens
yeah.
of us. I
You
promise.
promised it.
Yeah. Give us a little peek behind the curtain. How much of the metagame goes into making your deck list? Like expecting what you expect to see, on the field those
Yeah, I mean,
days.
it's a huge part of it. The fact Gruul was the most expected deck for us going into it, that's pretty much the only reason I even put Screaming Nemesis into my sideboard. I was kind of talking earlier about how the Gruul matchup is tough because they just have interaction and speed. So I was like, well, what if we just put Screaming Nemesis in our sideboard to kind of stall those decks a little bit? Because the red decks don't have a good way of removing Nemesis, since no matter how you do, it's going to deal damage to it. So that means you're usually killing one of their creatures. It's really good on defense. I kind of how I put it was it's kind of like a red True Name Nemesis in that matchup because it feels like they can't block it. It's a free block a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
that's one example because Nemesis would not have been in our sideboard at all if it wasn't for us expecting a lot of Gruul, because that is literally the only matchup we boarded Nemesis. It's just for Gruul. So yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
And the other side of that too is what we expected Demir to be also one of the higher decks, and Demir is the exact reason we even had the pivot plan in our sideboard. I feel like the pivot plan at least is more generalized, but Demir is pretty much the main reason for the pivot plan.
Right. And pivot plan is just taking out ley
Taking out
lines,
ley lines for an
trying to
alternate
grind.
threat, basically.
Yeah, just
Mhm.
grinding a little harder because that deck is just
Yeah,
removal dot
exactly.
deck. Yeah. Gotcha. So let's talk day one results. You ended up the day at what was your
Seven and
record? I know we
two.
had spoken early.
Yeah, so I
7-2.
did. I picked up a
Okay.
loss in round 3 and a loss in round 6. I want to say.
I remember the loss in round 3. We had spoken then.
Yeah, I think our match was over in 9 minutes in round 3. Yeah,
Oh wow.
I killed him game 1 in a minute. Game 2, he killed me in like 2 minutes. I think game 3 was like a little more back and forth, and then I died. So very quick.
I mean, I will say for all of you mid-range or control lovers, if you like eating food and availing yourselves of restrooms and stuff at large events such as these, play an aggro deck. You'll have time to do other
I'll be honest
things.
with you. Aggro is not usually a deck I bring to these tournaments, but man, the extra time to go get food and go use the bathroom, that was a game changer for me. I'm going to be honest.
Right? Okay. So obviously, all I do is play aggro. Like, I'll play other stuff when it's like an F&M or I'm just having fun. But my main go-to is aggro decks, and I think, and obviously you've been doing this for a long time now. But I would say that aside from us jokingly about like being able to get food, being able to use the bathroom, all those things are kind of nice. But I think more than that, even having the mental bandwidth, like to be able to just kind of take a breather for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then get back into the Magic, as opposed to going to turns for 4 rounds. I think that really puts a strain on, I think that's when you start having unforced
Oh,
errors,
yeah.
if you're,
Undoubtedly. I mean, yeah,
so,
like you said, we said it as a joke, but I don't even think it's, that much of a joke, even just because again that time to go, like you said, go get food, go use the bathroom, and that extra time you have, that's really valuable to make sure you keep up your stamina throughout the tournament. um
mm-hmm,
it's funny because I was talking to my girlfriend Julianne about it, and she was saying that one of the things she wants to practice going into like the next RC is she wants to really put a day together where we literally just play Magic for like 10 hours, and she practices that stamina, because the hardest part is spending so much time uh playing in one day that by round 6, 7, 8, 9, you're just exhausted.
yeah. And you just can't
Yeah.
think straight, making mistakes, like keeping a hand you probably shouldn't. I think that may be the biggest one is, so much of the game, I think these days is come down to keeping a good
Oh
hand or
yeah,
not.
mulligan decisions are some of the more hardest decisions in Magic, but also the most important ones. And then when you get to like
Yeah.
the
Because I
later
think,
rounds too, you're like, oh, my hands are just tired. I'm just gonna keep this. I don't want to shuffle anymore. Like especially in modern,
yeah.
right? Like you're just like, I'm already fetching so much to the fetch
Oh,
lands. Like I don't want to shuffle anymore.
Oh, I know. My friend used to run a Yorion pile, which is just constantly fetching in and out. I'm like, yeah. Like I play 9 mountains. Like I'm good to go. Draw the next.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, I don't need those things.
What do you do prep wise for day one?
I mean, one of my rituals is I just don't like to play Magic the day before a big tournament. So
You're not the only one to
yeah,
say that. I've seen multiple pros say, "Hey, I don't want to do any Magic day night
yeah.
before."
So what tournament started Saturday? So Friday I hung out while my friends played the Reese queue, and then when they were done, we went to the World of Coke and just hung out, saw what that was all about, and
Oh,
then
nice.
by the time I was done with that, we just went back to the hotel room and just relaxed until the next day. I mean, I just don't. When you go to these big tournaments, you've traveled for them, you have your deck list ready. Like, what amount of practice the day before is really going to get you ready for the next day? In my opinion, like you should already be ready by that point. So why spend any amount of mental energy playing Magic to practice when you should be ready
Mm-hmm.
already?
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I try not to play any Magic if I can help it. Have my deck list printed if it's one of
Mhm.
those of take care of all of the stuff. So even in the morning, like my bag is
Yeah,
packed. I don't have to think about anything. Because as we've talked about, just from playing the aggro decks and stuff, just maximizing as much mental energy as you have to devote to playing Magic. So you don't I don't want to think about, oh, did I pack this or that, like, oh man, I burned myself out because I played too late last night, or get a good night's sleep, eat well, have everything ready to go. So as little of your human function you have to you don't have to think about any of
yeah,
that
and
stuff. All you have to do is think
No,
about Magic.
honestly, and even now, like going to these big tournaments, I always say free breakfast is always a deal breaker for me, depending on the hotel we go to. Like if it has free breakfast, I'm down to go to that hotel. But if not, then we're not staying there because it's so easy to just go downstairs, eat breakfast, and have to figure out like where your meal's going to come from. And it's
Oh
so
yeah.
you
Hmm.
want to play a tournament full and ready to go. So it's really important.
So prepping day two. So that's day one stuff. Obviously, I mean, I think day one stuff you can apply to any tournament of like, hey, maximize your mental health and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Going into day two, obviously we're now cream of the crop. We've got really good players coming in, but we have open deck lists. How does that change anything for you? Are you doing any sort of prep
Yeah,
with
I
that?
mean, I think open deck lists is it's really good in my opinion. I really enjoy playing with open deck lists now. Knowing what you're playing against right off the bat, I think that really changes your range of keepable hands because it makes it a lot easier to know like when you mulligan what cards you want to put back or if you're on the play how you want to play your first card, because again with this combo style of leyline deck there's a lot of matchups where you want to hold your turn one creature until turn two so that you have a pump spell to try to save it if your opponent goes to kill it. Well, if you know you're against domain or something, you can just play your creature on turn one. You're just trying to kill him as fast as possible. But if you know you're against Demir that plays cut downs, then you could save your turn one creature for turn two. Things like that. Like I would go as far as saying like if you're against Demir, and you mulligan, you open with a ley line, just bottom the ley line, like things like that that you would never think about doing, but because it's open deckless and um, it really just informs your mulligan decisions and your turn one play so well.
So we're now almost 20 hours. No, I did that math wrong. But
We spent a lot of time playing Magic.
we spent a lot. Yeah, yeah. We're at least 12 hours just deep into
Mm-hmm.
competitive Magic, right? And now we're cutting to what,
Yeah, yeah,
quarterfinals?
top eight.
Yeah. Top eight. What was your quarterfinal
I
match?
played against Gruul. Yeah,
Okay.
and I was first seed going in, which was great. So I got to be on the play every
Okay.
match, and for an aggro deck, that is super
Oh, that's
important.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, too, I ended up winning every game on the play and losing every game on the draw in top eight. So thank God, thank God it was on the play because I don't think I would have won the tournament otherwise.
I mean, honestly, I feel like the play draw, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's felt, especially in the most recent years, the play draw discrepancy has really seemed to favor the play a lot
Oh
these
yeah,
days.
oh yeah. Being
Yeah.
on the play is just so important, especially when aggro is such a huge part of the metagame. Like you can make an
True.
argument that
True.
in the mid range mirrors you might want to be on the draw because you get the extra card or whatever. But when aggro is
Mhm.
the most dominant or one of the most dominant decks, having to play against those decks is so crucial.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it definitely has felt that way in the
Hmm.
recent years. So quarterfinals, Gruel Mirror, we take that. Then it's the
Yeah, play
semifinals,
against Gray on Domain.
Domain. That seemed like it was a good
Yeah,
match.
I it was probably the closest Domain match I've ever played, if I'm being honest, because usually that matchup just
Wow.
I crushed that matchup usually, but now we went all the way to game
Yeah.
three, and it was down to a lucky top deck on my part to take that last game. Yeah,
Wow. Crazy. And then obviously for the finals, we have
Yep,
Demir,
Demir bounce.
which is one of the only times you saw it
Yep,
too. Yeah,
yep.
and Bounce too. Which, what an interesting deck. The fact that a Demir Bounce deck exists, it like as a not only just like a ooh, it's a fun tier 2 thing we see at FNMs, like the fact that it is competitively good enough to get to the top of it, and you're just bouncing your
Yeah,
own
this town ain't big enough
like
as a messed up Magic card. That's for sure.
it is a mixed up Magic card, and it's just like 1,000 paper cuts is how they're trying to get you between Hopeless Nightmare and like I'm gonna make one more
Yeah,
otter
yeah.
baby.
Passing no to
Super.
runs and just like stop it, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always say too that the Teamer Otters deck in general never really impressed me as a deck, but the one big
The
yeah,
combo
the
one.
combo one, but like the one
Yeah.
big takeaway from I think that deck was just this town ain't big enough is insane, and more decks should be playing it.
Yeah, it's certainly like that cost reduction coming off your own because we've had so much support in the last few sets for our own permanent, like we have permanents on the board that do things here and there, But they have ETBs. So between, I think, like OTJ had that stuff. Dustborn
Hmm.
had all the rooms. Um, I think we didn't get a ton of that in Bloomberg. No, we got the talents in
Yeah, yeah, the
Bloomberg.
talents in Bloomberg.
Yeah. So the last 3 standard sets have given us permanents that enter the board and actually do something aside themselves. Like it's a 2-for-1
Yeah,
in that sense. It's not a huge, but you get double value. It's like even Spyglass Siren, like making a map
yeah,
token,
it's not
right?
irrelevant.
Like this is a relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we've had a lot of small low to the ground permanents on the battlefield that do something a little extra to the board in I mean basically every set since Lost
Pretty
Caverns.
much, yeah. I mean, being able
Yeah.
to turn this town into basically 2 mana, you draw a relevant card and you bounce your opponent's relevant card, like that just makes the cards so incredibly good. And there's even situations where you
Yeah.
just want to bounce 2 of your things, you just turn into 2 mana, draw 2 cards, basically.
Yeah, and it's even tough to answer when they level up the Storm Chasers talent and they get
Yeah,
it back.
yeah. When the game goes long, that inevitability is just so hard to beat. There's 7 mana. You just all right. Here's a talent. Level it up. This town. Talent. Level it up. This town. You just keep doing it every single turn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it truly isn't like whoever decided, or I'm not sure how that deck came into being, but
Yeah, I think it was
whoever.
Team Sanctum of All came up with like the Teamer Otter combo deck back in like the World
Uh huh.
Championships, and
Right.
then
Yes.
it was I don't after that though it was just random people experimenting with this town plus beans and a bunch of random decks, and then after that people realized wait
Yeah.
you don't even need beans, you just
You
need
don't need
talent,
beans.
like
Yeah.
talent in this town and nowhere to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when Talent came out, and was like, oh, whatever, and it was like the least played Talent. It was like 30
I
cents.
Yeah,
So
I
I think it's
bought
like
all 4 of mine for $1.50 and now they're what, like
same.
15, $20 each, like
Yeah, I got mine for 80 cents because as long as it says prowess on it, I will buy 4 of it.
yeah,
Just in
yeah,
case, like it makes its way
right,
into modern. I'll have them so I can
yeah.
play in prowess. And yeah, it ended up being, and I'm still not going to sell them because I suck.
Not relatable. I mean, hey, I'm not selling anything anytime soon, so yeah.
Exactly. Well, I doubt you'll be selling any of these cards ever from this
Yeah,
deck.
I mean, I already want to foil it out, so we'll see. We'll see if I do that.
Oh, okay. You don't think you want to just keep the cards as is, the cards that won the Spotlight
That's a
series?
fair question. I didn't really think about it like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'll think about that. And maybe we'll leave together like as
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Food for thought. Food for thought.
Okay. What would you say if people are looking to get into competitive Magic? What would be a good place to start?
I mean, I think the best place to start is 100% Arena. Um, just
Mm-hmm.
because Arena's free. So for the most part, Arena's free. So it's a great way to just start playing. And while I don't think Arena is the best place for meaningful playtesting, I think Arena is the best place to really get an understanding of the metagame, your deck, understanding how to play your deck and how your deck interacts with the other decks. But overall, player player level is not super high in Arena as compared to something like MTGO. But I do think
Sure.
Arena is a great starting point for sure.
And it's really
It is,
accessible
yeah,
too, right? Like as you said, it's free. You can get it on your
yeah, yeah.
phone, computer, like whatever you want to do, really, and you can
Yeah, I
play
mean, most of
Magic.
my playtesting for this event was me playing on my iPad on the couch. I mean, like, if it works, it works.
Re- okay. Yeah. No. Let's talk about that. I'm curious. So most playtesting happened not going to RCQs or anything like that. It was mostly just jamming games on an iPad,
Pretty
playing
much. I
Arena.
mean, I still played my RCQs every weekend for the most part.
Sure.
I played Leyline at those, so I learned a thing or two about the deck and everything at those events. But for the actual like tuning of the deck list, it was mostly just playing on Arena. Me and Stanley would be individually playing on Arena. He would have some random idea, text me like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" Like, all right, I'll try it on Arena. I'll tell you what I think. And I was like, "Oh, this is really good," or "Oh, this sucks." So a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
because one thing I do love about Arena is you just get to jam games, and I think there is value in that because if you want to test a new card and how that new card works, you can just play like 10 games in 2 hours and have a better understanding of how that card plays.
All right. So we've secured a PT
We
invite
have.
amongst other things, but I think most notably for you, the PT
Hmm.
invite, something you've been working for with your dad back in the
Yep.
day, huge culmination of the last decade of Magic that you've been playing. What is the goal next now that you have this PT invite? Or where is the next PT
So
to? Is it
the PT that I qualified for is Pro Tour Chicago, but I did end up
okay?
deferring my invite to Pro Tour Vegas just because with my work schedule it wouldn't be
Oh,
realistic to go to Chicago. So
okay.
I'll be going to Pro Tour Vegas, which is in June.
Okay, great. So Pro Tour
Mhm.
Vegas, and what are we looking to do?
Well, I mean, my dream has always been to get onto the Pro Tour, so I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about what's after that. But I mean, hey, what you need a 10-6 record to re-qualify. So I guess that's the next goal. Because man, I want to play one Pro Tour, but why not two, right? Like, yeah,
Why not, right? All right. So requalifying for the Pro Tour, that's next in
yeah, I
your
guess
sights.
so. I mean, yeah,
Very cool.
it's funny 'cause I say that too because like I said, my dream's always been to qualify for the Pro Tour, which I did do at the RC in DC, and then I re-qualified for the
Right,
same Pro
yes.
Tour in at Atlanta. So I was like, I spent 12 years, was never able to qualify for the Pro Tour, and then I qualified for the same one twice. Like, what are the
Well,
chances?
arguably the second time you did it in a little flashier
I
fashion, I
did,
would
yes,
say.
yes.
In terms of Pro Tour competitive Magic, do you have any final
I
thoughts?
mean, I think it's in a great spot. I'm excited to see what the future holds. I mean, I'm excited that the Spotlight Series is a thing. I'm excited for the two RCs every season. I mean, just last year, I felt like there was a drought in opportunities to play, but now with three RCs every year and then two actual RCs per season, plus the spotlights, we're looking at 11 premier events that all can qualify you for the Pro Tour. Like that's a lot, and I will not be going to all of them, which is not something I could have said last year, you know. So I'm excited for the availability and yeah, just to see where the future of the game goes, I guess. But yeah, excited.
Thank you so much for doing this interview. I know you're busy and all that, but I think it's really important and fun for people to get kind of an insight into competitive Magic and what it takes to be a pro player and all
Yeah,
that
no, I
stuff.
mean, I appreciate
Uh,
you having me. I will. I would always happily be come back if you ever want to yap some more about whatever, you know. So
you know me, I love
yeah, me
yapping.
too,
This is
man.
how. I was. Do you have anything you want to shout out? Tell the folks where to find you or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at Nick_Odenheimer on Twitter. Make sure to follow me. Me and Stanley are still selling our leyline sideboard guides. So if you want to learn the leyline from the two best leyline players in the world, let us know.
Go buy this sideboard guide. If you are interested at all in playing aggro, even if you're not playing this specific leyline deck, the ability to learn as we've talked this whole past hour or 2 hours, learning how to mulligan properly, learning what the sideboard, not just like, ooh, put these cards, put in, take these cards out, knowing the ins and outs of why you do that, into what matchups, because obviously the meta is going to
Hmm.
change, but knowing, hey, I do this versus this kind of deck, versus a control deck, versus a removal heavy deck, versus a combo deck, like learning when and where to take your cards in, what you're trying to do, whether you're going for an alternate plan and stuff. These guys know what they're talking about. You should go get their sideboard guide if that is something you are interested in learning how to do and playing at a competitive level. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. If this is something that you like or you want to see me do more of, I'm happy to do that. Just leave a comment down below letting me know that, and I will make sure to interview whoever notable Magic players will talk to me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.